For most organizations, the inside joke is that HR is always the least favorite department. And today on the Tech Your Business podcast, we'll be talking about how your business can use technology to improve your HR processes, improve your hiring, improve your team management. So maybe HR might be a couple of people's favorite departments. And today, to talk about that, we'll be talking with Katherine McCord. So welcome to the show, Katherine.
Thank you so much for having me, Peter. And I love that intro that you did, by the way, because I can't tell you how many times I've told people, oh, I do people operations consulting. And they look a little confused. I say, it's similar to HR. And they go, oh, and like their face just drops, right? I'm like, oh, no, don't do that. Come on now. But I get it, though. I do. I get why that happens. And especially when you're talking about technology, because a lot of our tech is really behind the times. It's bad.
It's really true.
Yeah, it's very shameful. In fact, it's funny. Our applicant tracking systems, which is like our version of a CRM, right? It's where all the candidates go when they apply, right? We store the basic design. Like there have been additional features added on, right? But the basic design has not changed since the 90s.
Whoa.
And that's bad.
Whoa.
Yeah, we're way back, like decades old, and I'm just like, and it's so funny. I tell people like, you do realize how sad that is, right? Like you do understand how far technology's come and how different this should look by now.
Because you have everything looking like Windows XP.
Yeah. Yeah. They're only just now starting to see a few applicant tracking systems that are really spicing things up and changing the functionality and all that kind of stuff. But man, up until 2 years ago, it was bad. It was super archaic.
Yeah, so I think you've been in the just tell us a bit about yourself, about what you do.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been running people operations consulting uh, program for a long time now, over a decade, which is like surreal to say out loud, but it's true. And I've been doing this a long time. Then fast forward, so I've been recruiting and doing HR and all that kind of stuff for a long time. I have a very innovative approach. I've always done things in a very forward facing and way in that way that's all about KPIs and making sure that we're increasing productivity and increasing the mission of the company and supporting the mission of the company and also supporting the humans simultaneously. I focus on universal design in the workplace, which is not really something it's common in tech, right? But it's not really something that's ever discussed in terms of HR. So I've been doing that for quite some time. Fast forward, and in 2021, um, without any kind of tech background at all, I designed the first ever anti-bias applicant tracking system, which is now being absorbed. Yeah, the design is actually being absorbed by another HR tech company that's also a startup, but they're really cool. They want to just bring it into their design. And then I became an international speaker and teacher on the topics of innovating HR and innovating HR tech and innovating inclusion. So that's what I do. That's what I spend my time doing, and I love it.
So this anti-bias thing you talked about, so I think let's talk a bit more about that. So how are you able to use how are you able to use this anti-bias thing you designed to create a more inclusive workplace for people?
Right. So the applicant tracking system is just it was designed in a very quick fashion as a response to like Monster and the other big job boards, right? And so it came out very, very quickly. And there was not a whole lot of thought and consideration put into the design. It was just kind of like, poof, here's a product. We threw it out there, right? And even as we've developed along the last several decades, there's been a lot of focus on user interface, UI, UX, and there's been a lot of work on in terms of efficiency increase, but not a lot of work on the people centric side, right? And making sure that this technology actually functions well for candidates. And one of the things that I've come to really understand, I've gotten multiple neuroscience certifications, DEI certifications, all that, and I dive into this stuff all the time. I'm a research nerd. Like when other people are scrolling on Facebook, I'm researching and learning things. That's just kind of how I work. And so I wanted to design something that actually made sense for candidates because one of the things I've seen in my decade plus recruiting and HR and all of that is that a lot of people struggle with those systems and they find them confusing or they're turned off by it or it doesn't work for how their brain function works. And then we have resumes, which even, Harvard has put out articles about this. LinkedIn has even put out articles about this, about the fact that resumes don't really work effectively, right? They have a lot of inherent bias in them, even down to, and people don't realize that people think bias is only about things like race and gender and all that, right? But it's also things as simple as name, uh, color of on resumes, fonts used. All of these things can create
Mm.
or can be subject to bias because bias is just about our own experience and our own response to something, right? And so using resumes puts a lot of candidates at a disadvantage because there is no right way to make one, right? So what I did was I set out to a stop having to use the resume. I'm all about firing the resume. Let's just get rid of it. Poof, be gone. Just it doesn't work. There's no right way to do it. People get frustrated. I did a poll a while back and discovered that over 90% of people do not feel comfortable making a resume. I'm like, but that's how they're supposed to get a job. Like that makes no sense, right? And then also to fix the bias issue because there's so many biases out there and they're not neuro friendly. Most application processes are horribly defunct for people in the neurodiversity community, which for anybody listening is just medically visible or diagnosable difference in how the brain processes information. So everything from like ADHD and autism over to the mental health spectrum, over to like MS and seizure disorders as well. So PTSD falls under that. So a lot of these conditions just don't interact well with the type of applications that we historically have. So I did a lot of research and I did polling and I did focus groups and because I wanted everybody's input to be in there, right? I was like, if I just design it there again, you're just going to have my thoughts, right? And that again doesn't help anybody. So we want to have everybody's thoughts. So I brought in as many people as I could, reached out to every marginalized group I could think of, and I was surprised at some of the things I learned that I had not even in my years. I could years and years and years of taking notes of all the defunct things I'd seen, there were still things I'd missed because they weren't my experience and hadn't been things that had been shared with me. So I took all this information and every single issue that was brought up was somehow addressed in our technology. So we did, in fact, get rid of the resume. We made everything skill focused and mission alignment focused and it was really cool. And I laid it out because I also know from years of recruiting, right, what it is that hiring managers need to know, right? And I know the order that they care about these things. So that's how we put it on there. We put everything in the order that hiring managers want to see it, and had like alternate wordings that people could get clicked. If they didn't understand a question, they could click a button and see different ways that that was worded. There were helpful hints, all these types of things, and skill matching directly to the job. So it's not just here are my skills, but how do I actually align to the job, right? We made it quick so that people weren't spending too long focusing on it, and it really worked. And it there were no names. You had a candidate headline similar to what you have on LinkedIn,
Mm.
and what was cool was that even just with the first few companies that we got to use this, is that candidates immediately went, "I like this." Like
Oh,
there was a survey afterwards and people were going, "Oh my gosh, yes, this is so much better. I like this." They also liked that the diversity data collection was completely anonymous and not tied to directly to their application because there's a valid reason to track, you know, who's applying, who's moving through the process, who's all that. But attaching it to someone's application it can go south, right? And
yeah.
especially if it, yeah, and especially from the candidate perspective, it can make them feel uncomfortable. So people really responded well. They felt seen and heard by it. They also felt like they were actually putting in more productive applications on on the hiring team side, they loved it because what they needed to know was front and center, right? They got to engage with the candidates more before the interview process because they had to ask the candidates permission to unlock their profile and get their information,
Mm.
which also put more power back in the candidates' hands, which was cool. Um, and it gave them more of the feedback from the hiring managers is that they had more of a window into the human right? And understanding the human. And there are a few other technologies out there, like, not doing that exactly, but in different parts of the hiring process that are doing similar things, or that have um, even post hire, like during onboarding, that are gathering this type of data. And so using technology to move more towards a human centric process and move away from documents and treating people as other pieces of paper into this human experience, I think is a great way that we can use technology to further inclusion.
So still on the topic of neurodiversity, for the people who have scaled the interview process and maybe gotten into the company, is there any way that technology can help the business better understand these neurodiverse people and better support their neurodiverse team members?
Oh gosh, yes. So number one, when you're onboarding companies, whenever you're onboarding people, use assessments to learn how the person likes to communicate and how the person learns, right? And the specifics of that. So not just visual, kinetic, auditory, right? We all kind of know the three basic learning styles, but the more details of that and how to best work with them, because that's how you're going to see them at their maximum productivity, right? So gather that information, have some touch points with them about those types of things. Also, changing accommodations into standard options, folks. 54% of accommodations are free for the Department of Labor. Okay. I don't know why we're making people jump through hoops to have tools that will help them be more productive. We hired them to be productive and we're just going, no, sorry, you don't get to be productive. That makes no sense. That's completely counterintuitive. So instead, make accommodation standard. And a lot of those accommodations are technology. A lot of the options are free or extremely inexpensive. One of my all-time favorites right now is UserWay. They have a simple plugin that you can give. Some of it's free, some of it's not. It just depends on what level you use. But when people click on it, they can adjust the technology to look how they need it to look and interact how they need it to interact. And it's extremely user friendly from that standpoint. Then you also have Storied, which is one of my favorites. They're one of the what do you call it, text to type, I guess is what you call that type of
Yeah.
technology, but they also help you organize. Like, so it's not just, and especially for the neurodivergent population, because you you have, some people with autism monologue, right? And with other neurodiversities, they'll monologue. You have people with ADHD who do what I call Candyland storytelling, which is like, you're going to go on this weavy, windy, colorful journey. And sometimes you're going to skip back to the beginning and then you're going to go back forward. And it's a wonderful experience, like if you're interacting, but occasionally if you're trying to get an email from that person, that can get a little confusing. So, so Story actually helps organize for you. I actually have a friend who's ADHD who used that technology, and she was talking to it, and in the middle of it, literally goes, "Oh, look, a squirrel outside! It's eating a nut. How cute!" And then went back to what she was talking about. And when she was done, Story went, "So you mentioned squirrels, and I'm not sure that that fits into the rest of this. Do you want to edit that out?" And then she was like, "Yeah, thank you for noticing that." And it helps you, format it in all the way that makes sense. So it's a wonderful, um, it's a wonderful way to use that type of technology, right? And to offer those free accommodations. And the truth is, we don't need to know a person's diagnosis, and they may not know, because the diagnostic process is cumbersome, it is expensive, it's not available to everyone. Some people are hard to diagnose. I am notoriously hard to diagnose. Um, and so, and by the way, like, there's whole groups of humans who just now have full diagnostic criteria for their marginalized group. So, it's not the most simple thing. So instead of insisting on diagnosis, if your team member clearly needs help with something, just help them. Just give them a tool. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
you know?
True.
But yeah,
So
go ahead. Sorry.
yeah. I think I was just talking about the when you talked about stories winding, going back and forth,
Oh
and
yeah. Candyland. Yeah, I seriously, like, that's my favorite way to describe it, because I have so many friends with ADHD, and I love how they speak and tell stories and all that. But it is like this colorful, weavy, winding journey. And sometimes you hop back to the beginning and you leap back forward, and it's really cool. And that's another, by the way, like with communication, I think something that we miss is just being able to tell people like, hey, I love how you're telling this story, but where my mind is today, I'm having trouble focusing on it. So I love the ADHD communication, but if I'm at my peak of mania, because I have manic cycles as part of my
Yeah,
bipolar one, if I'm at the peak, I can't follow that. Like when I'm at the peak of my mania, I can't follow it. All the rest of the time, I'm good. I love it. But at the peak, so now I have a signal that I give my friends where I like put my fingers in a pyramid and I'm like, make a point, make a point. 'Cause I'm like, and they know that it's about me, not them. Like I just can't follow it at that particular moment. But also technology can help with that. So some people, they have, uh, they may have trouble focusing or something like that. And so there are little technology reminders that you can have just like on a Zoom that can, raise a hand and be like, and that can signal the person, okay, I need
yeah.
to, circle back or something like that. So it's a nice way to not interrupt, but to still get your point made, right? 'Cause you don't want to interrupt and make somebody feel invalidated, but you do need to sometimes go, "Okay, help me, because 'cause I'm lost."
True. Now, for businesses today, businesses operating in the current world, what are the biggest challenges that you see them face in the HR space? And how is technology helping them address these challenges that they've seen them face too?
That's a good question, actually. The the biggest challenges in HR, number 1 right now being grossly understaffed. So a lot of people don't know, but the HR world saw a 37% reduction in
Mm.
positions in the past year, in 1 year. And so that's a lot. And when I say HR, I'm encompassing recruiting and all of that into that, right? So like that whole bubble saw 37% reduction. And so right now they're very understaffed. And so technology can actually help astronomically with that. So from keeping them organized, right? Learning to better use the features and better applicant tracking systems that do keep you organized, and automated systems and emails and reminders and workflows and all of that. Right now, it is more crucial than ever to have a great applicant tracking system. And other than mine, to which I'm obviously very biased, uh, there are some other great ones like Salesforce. If you have the money for it, it is expensive, but it's really great. Jazz HR is not expensive and has terrific workflow, reminders, personalization, so that candidates can still feel that human touch, but really you're just automating everything because you don't have time in your day for right? Um, so using technology that way in the interview process, using technology to help prep people, to help remind you of follow-ups, to help remind the candidate of follow-ups. So even in my calendar system, I like to use Calendly. This is just personal preference. There's plenty of other calendars out there that'll do the exact same thing. And the way that it's set up, when somebody has a meeting that they booked with me slash interview that they booked with me, they get reminders, in certain increments leading up to it. And I also have included in there links to the accommodations, the standard accommodations that I offer, right? So they can select those things before I ever even speak to them.
Mm.
And that still, again, keeps it human centric, right? Without me having to take the time every single time to text people multiple reminders, send them individual email, right? It keeps it automated, but still personal. And even with the accommodation bit, letting people go, yeah, this would actually be really helpful for me. Well, that's going to save us time when we meet for me to know that ahead of time. So using tools like that, they keep everything human centric and keep it flowing. There's some great what are known as HRIS systems. So that's the HR stuff on the back end, right? And like payroll, all that type of thing. And that's where you're going to see payroll, employee records, time off requests, that type of thing would go into an HRIS system. And HRIS systems nowadays a lot of times have the login features for the actual employees. So they can get in and request their own time off. They can, check to see whatever about their own payroll. They can, change their benefits. Those types of things are really big time savers for HR. And they're also helpful for the employees because they can just get in, do it, get done, and move on with their life and not have to be waiting on somebody else. And it
Yeah.
decreases stress. Um, and then uh, so I would say that for the time saving, that's really massive. Also, just for keeping things organized, that's because HR, man, for some reason, a lot of times HR struggles with the organizational part. So keeping it all organized, and then the human centric part, and this is where technology such as Zoom, um, podcasting interfaces, because a lot of people don't think of doing internal company podcasts, but it really works very well.
Hmm.
Um, and there are even specific apps designed for companies where they'll send it out to your all employees, and it's really cool. So using technology to keep track of and connect to your team members without obsessing about them. Like, have you noticed that like, there's this uptick in like companies being obsessed with their people? Like, y'all need to chill out. Like, like you are meeting with these people way too often. You're like you're interrupting them. You're and you're asking questions that are way too personal. Like, like let's bring it back. Let's dial it back and team building and all that. It has its points, but it can also be very exclusive. Like if for certain neurodivergent people, for people who just that's not what they're there for at work. It's different personal preferences and beliefs and all that. Sometimes those things can be exclusive. So instead, using something like a podcasting system, email. Please stop having 50 million meetings, people, uh, over things that could have been emails. Slack, things like this, right? It's making such a difference, and it's making it so much easier to connect without continuous interruption or over socialization. And that's the other thing, right? When you get on the phone or Zoom, you just start chit chatting. Whereas if you just send a quick little Slack message, you get the question answered, and away you go.
You're
So I
done,
think
yeah.
it helps. I think, yeah. So helping with the over personalization slash also somehow at the same time dehumanizing HR. It's drastically helping with that. It's drastically helping with organization and keeping candidate centric processes flowing.
Okay, so you mentioned a lot of tech solutions. Now, for a business owner who wants to pick a tech solution or a couple of tech solutions to help with their HR or improve their HR, what are some tips you would recommend that they can apply when
Yes.
evaluating the options?
Number one, get the people who are actually going to be using it involved. Somehow, so many companies miss that step. Whoever's going to be using it needs to help pick it. Okay. So get your HR leader, recruiting leaders, whoever it is, have them come in, play with these things, and then let you know their feedback. Let Find out from them what matters most to them, what features they need most. Okay. Start with that. Have them involved very heavily. Number two, go to if you can go to some HR tech convention or whatever kind of tech conventions. Check out what's available. Play with it, interact with it, ask your questions, compare side by side. It's a great opportunity to meet a lot of people, check a lot of things out, and not have to feel so overwhelmed. Because so for instance, instead of because typically demos take like an hour, right? So in a one day at a convention, I can go see 20, 30 technologies where if I did an hour long demo for each, I would only see eight. So going to a technology convention is a great way to do it. Um, so look into things like that. Also find like the tech blogs and find the unbiased part. I just kicked my camera. Find the unbiased ones. Find not the ones that are run by an HR tech company, but a random, tech person or HR person who does a blog about HR tech. Check those out, but in terms of actually picking the technology, um, do customization first. That's the number one thing I look for. Can it be customized? Can it be personalized? That's an absolute must. Number two, and automation features has to be able to have a lot of automation features. If I'm having to do everything manually, what's the point? Right. So lots and lots of automation features, plugins, the ability to plug into other systems for you to find a cool app later and plug it in. So API integration, very, very important. Um, and then finally, I would say inclusion. Look for, and really find out because every company is going to tell you that they're inclusive, right? Like get a few people who are from various marginalized communities, including neurodiversity, people who would have accessibility concerns of a physical variety, so from the disability community, age, all of these things, and have these people play with the technology first and tell you how inclusive it actually is. and really kind of engage with it that way, and also ask those questions. What did you do to ensure that your technology is inclusive? And if the person who's giving you the demo or whatever cannot answer that, great, have them find out what steps did you take. I would actually hear like what did you actually do to make sure, because they're all going to tell you that it was inclusive when really and truly there was some 60-year-old white person who who did it, who has no neurodiversity and no disability, right? And not bashing on white people, but just saying it is true. It's they tend to have, or they'll have one person from one community check it out. I literally, this is not a joke. I walked into a tech convention and I was playing with different techs and I asked a company that question. I said, what did you do to ensure that it's inclusive? They literally said to me, I'm not kidding, a black developer created it. So I think we will. And I went, oh Lord. And I almost wanted to go, is he here? Does he know that he's supposed to be representing all people that are whatever? And I also like to remind people that inclusion is for literally everybody. There's not one group. There's not one, dynamic. There's not. It's literally for every single person. So we have to consider different communication styles. Does it address all the different communication styles? Does it address um, is it something that people who haven't been around as much tech in their careers, is that something that they can pick up on for socioeconomic reasons, whatever it is? And so usability really does, uh, an ease of usability does really matter. So check into those things, just play around with it, be a little nosy, get a little sassy. Or these people are asking you to spend a lot of money with them, ask the questions. Don't be scared to do that. But those are my tips. So get the people involved. Check out tech conventions if you can. They're absolutely the best. Secondary to that would be unbiased tech blogs. And finally, ask about inclusion and test it.
Hmm, really great advice. I think anyone should that's looking to implement HR tech should pick up.
You would think, but somehow it just goes whoosh.
So, so now looking at the trends in HR technology, especially of recent, what are the
Mhm.
most impactful of those trends that you are seeing right now?
Right. First of all, good and bad is AI. So AI is doing wonderful things for HR tech in terms of helping with interview prep, helping, they have those cool like HR assistant things where they can type in an answer and the AI interacts with the employee or candidate or whoever and answers their questions. Those types of things are wonderful. Where AI should absolutely not be used ever, 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 not anytime now or in the foreseeable future, maybe one day, is it should not be used to replace a human being. So AI should not be doing interviews. AI should not be reading resumes. It does not understand what it's looking at. It cannot do what a human mind can do. What it is great for is going through your resume database and pulling out resumes that might be interesting. In other words, people have already applied and that kind of thing. So it's not really for review; it's more for sourcing them and finding them that are already there. But once a resume has been submitted to you, a human being still needs to be interacting with that. Um, but AI is wonderful and cool, and it's going to do so many amazing things for HR and for the people in the workforce, and I cannot wait. But so AI is very heavily impactful, and HR folks, and even on the tech side, if you're on the tech side, make sure your HR folks get certified in AI, because there needs to be HR for AI, not just AI for HR. So be paying attention to that. And then another cool one that I'm really starting to see a lot of is less and less of those awful, awful, awful personality assessments where it's like, if you see Jane steal 35 cents from the cash register, wait, like no more of that. And now, or like, would you rather be a pirate or a member of the Imperial Navy? I was actually asked that once on a
Wow.
on an application. That's not a joke, sadly. Um, so getting away from those and moving towards those really cool assessments that help you understand communication styles, motivation styles, things that are actually going to help leadership learn and guide the people. That's extraordinary. Um, so those are wonderful, wonderful pieces of technology. The other cool thing that's starting to happen is that we are starting to see video games come out that help people find jobs. And that is the best thing ever. That is so
Nice.
cool. I'm not even a gamer, but I am utterly amazed at these games that are being created. And they basically prove your skills, alert a company that you have these skills, and then you can connect with them. And I think that's absolutely extraordinary. So um, those are all things to be looking for and looking forward to.
Amazing. So for business owners who might be intimidated by new technology, maybe they want to implement, but it looks very scary. What's a good starting point for them to modernize their HR process?
Start with a good HRIS or ATS system, depending on what exactly your needs are. So if you're little itty bitty, you may not need a full on HRIS. You may just want an applicant tracking system and then basic payroll system. Some of these technologies are plug and play. You can plug in what you need, take out what you don't. I will give you a hint too. Nothing that has the word pay in it should have anything to do with your HR. So if a company's name has the word pay in it, that's not your HR tech. Don't go there. But start off little. Just start off with what you actually need. Do you need wider place job placement? Okay, then you probably need an ATS, right? Because a lot of people don't know that that's one of the best features. It's not just storage of the candidates; it will send your job out to more places and get you more attention. So that's a really good place to start. Start simple. Start inexpensive. Uh, don't overdo it. Don't get crazy with it. It's all right. And and get you a recruiter, an HR person who actually knows what they're doing. That's another big piece, but that's another show. But for tech, for tech, just start off small and look for something that you can then add to. Look for something that then when you're ready to grow and get to that point that you can add the other pieces that you need.
Great. So for business owners still, we've talked about a lot of things, but as we come to the end, what's one thing that you'd like them to leave with? Something that maybe I have not asked, but you know that would benefit them on this topic.
Stop overspending on your HR tech, please. From everyone who has ever been responsible for a budget and HR tech, let me tell you, please quit overspending. I consistently see companies spending hundreds or even thousands of dollars a month on tech when the exact same or higher quality could have been had for under 100. So please be very, very careful. Expensive does not necessarily mean better. Some of the best technologies that are out there right now are the less expensive ones because they're the most innovative, they're the newest to the game, they're the ones that aren't dragging along behind. Kind of like I said, the one exception to that would definitely be Salesforce. Their stuff is pretty awesome. Um but um on the Salesforce recruit side. But definitely don't think that more expensive is better. That is not reality. Don't break your budget over HR tech. There's no need.
Great advice. So, for the listeners who want to continue this conversation, who want to get advice from you, who want to learn more from you, who want to connect with you, what's the best way they can reach you?
Sure. So I am all over LinkedIn and super, super easy to find because I'm one of like three Katherine McCords on LinkedIn that's spelled the way I am. So super easy to find. Connect with me there. Go to my business website, titanmanagementusa.com. And also my speaker site. So I come and I teach classes. I do various engagements, things like that. So please feel free to reach out and have me come in and speak for you. And that would be at kmccordspeaking.com. And I also have an event coming up in October. We have a few spots left, and it's a collaborative where we're actually going to come together and build solutions for HR tech, leadership, these types of things. It's the People Operations Innovation Summit, and you can get tickets at peopleverse.org, and it's going to be super fun.
So, all the links will be on this screen and in the show notes, your LinkedIn, titanmanagement.com, KMcCord speaking, and for the conference, peopleverse.com.
Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much, Peter. It's been a joy being with you.
Thank you. And for the listeners, did you get any value from this episode? If you did, please share it with anyone who you know has HR as a problem, whose HR department is not the favorite in their business. Share it with them so they can get some tips on improving that. And if you want to be the first person to know when we post helpful content like this for your business, don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe wherever you see us, wherever you hear us on. So we have over 100 episodes, so you can scroll down, listen to as many as you want till we get to the new episode next week. Don't forget to keep taking your business. Bye for now.